Our next guest has just arrived back in the country after being detained in Sri Lanka over the weekend. Green MP Jan Logie had her passport taken from her while on a fact-finding trip with Australian Green MP Jan Logie is with us now. Welcome back. Why were you actually detained? What reason did they give?
They said we were in breach of the Immigration Act, that we were on the wrong visa and were doing inappropriate work, except that before we went we asked for advice, and I had this through Australia, of what visa we should apply for, that we were wanting to come and discuss human rights, and we were told the visa to apply for. So we did that. We did media saying why we were going, and as an extra measure, the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs sent a letter to the Sri Lankan government telling them we were coming and what visa we were on. So that excuse that our visa was wrong really doesn't stand up.
Did you feel you were in any danger while you were being detained?
No, I think I felt safe. The media was in the room. We were foreign politicians.
Never feel safe when the media's in the room.
I really did.
Yeah.
That made such a difference for me. But the thing that really freaked me out was the fear on the women's faces who we were with. We were with a quite non-political woman who had organised the meetings, and when we got into the car with her, she was just looking down and saying, you know, I've got children, and was obviously visibly scared to be associated with us and the thought of challenging the government. OK, there have been critics who said this was a bit of a publicity stunt on your part. It was designed to do what it did do in the end, which was get some publicity because you were detained. What do you say to that? Well, I think at the basis of that argument, I'm struggling to understand it, to be honest, because we had concerns around human rights abuses because there's been a lot of reports done telling us there's a problem. Absolutely agreed. But what does a Green MP from New Zealand going there a few days before the CHOGM meeting, what's that ever really going to achieve that's new, that's breaking new ground? Well, to actually make sure that human rights are on the discussion, are being discussed ahead of CHOGM. CHOGM's got a history of leading the world around human rights, and yet they're about to, unless we intervene, appoint an accused war criminal as the head of the institution. So if we had not done anything, if we'd just said, OK, well, there's human rights abuses in Sri Lanka, let's just leave that be, then wouldn't it make more sense then to go there? I mean, I know John Key is going, but to hitch your wagon to that somehow and go there while CHOGM was on, while that's happening, to get your voice heard rather than go sort of on your own and make waves that way? Wouldn't it make more impact, more sense to do it during CHOGM? Well, I think that some of the civil society groups are hoping to organise some forums there, but they're not sure about the possibility of that. We're not part of the government. The government has told us before we went that they didn't want to engage publicly on these issues. So actually our ability to do that would have been really limited. You were there 3 days. Yeah. In that context, I guess it was a failure, was it not? What you went to achieve did you really achieve anything? We met well over 20 organisations. We heard a huge number of stories about what's happening now, which is what we wanted, to be able to come back and feed into John Key before he makes the decision about whether to support the President-to-be chair, to give him the up-to-date information that we could get. And did you do that? We did. We got just horrific stories, and we saw the presence of the military everywhere. In the north, it seemed like every 5 minutes there was a military base. We met a man who'd been released from detention a couple of days before. He'd been held for 10 months without charge and had been tortured. We heard stories of women who are being raped by the army, and that this is happening on a regular basis. And also just the fact of that fear of those women when immigration arrived for their lives and their children. I think we know that things are not OK there. Just finally, the Black Caps are playing a one-day match against Sri Lanka, in Sri Lanka, starting today/tonight, our time. Should they be doing that? Is that sending the right message to New Zealand's stance on anything with Sri Lanka and its human rights? I'm not going to get into the issue about sports and politics. I think the main focus at the moment is the Commonwealth. It's got a great history around human rights. It's just not OK to put a accused war criminal as the head of an organisation that's supposed to be promoting human rights. OK, interesting to get your thoughts on this. John Key is going, of course. The Prime Minister of Canada and the Prime Minister of India, two pretty heavy hitters in the scheme of CHOGM, aren't going.
Does it send a stronger message to say, no, we're not going to support this, we're not going, or should you go there and be inside the tent and rattle some cages?
Well, I think the main message we had from people there when we were asking them about this was that there needed to be a public challenge. So whether that public challenge is not going, or whether that public challenge is making sure that the president's not appointed, either I think is okay. What they're terrified about is that the Commonwealth will appoint Rajapaksa as the chair, and that will undermine any initiatives at the United Nations level to get an independent investigation.
All right, we will leave it there. Jan Logie, Green MP, thanks so much for coming in.
You're very welcome, Ta.